Hello, and welcome to another episode of Erlang Bits.
Erlang bits.
Today we're going to talk about types. You can check out Erlang's type reference at this URL here. I linked it in the description below. Today we're just going to use an example type called option or maybe, depending on the languages that you're familiar with. So here I'm using option because maybe is potentially a reserved word in Erlang in the future. So an option type describes the situation where you may have something or you have nothing. So in this case, I'm going to say it's none or some type of A. So we have A as a input and we can have A as an output here. And so the type system will allow us to type check functions. So here's a function called map, where we take a function that takes an A. So this is a single input A and returns a B. And then we take an option of A, so either something or nothing, and we return an option B. And we can use Erlang's pattern matching to match out this sum, or we can match out none in this case. So if we have sum, then we're going to apply the function f onto x in this case, which is bound to whatever the type of A is, and then we'll return this option of B. Or if we're given f and then a none, we'll return none. There's also, for example, an option type. So given a default A and a function from A to B, so note that these function types are exactly the same, and an option A, so we take 3 inputs, we can return a B. So in the case that there is a none, so we pattern match out the none, and we'll return the default. Otherwise, we'll apply f to the x. So that's an option function. And then we can have functions like is_sum, where it doesn't actually matter what the type of the option is, but if it's a sum, we're going to return true, and if it's a none, we're going to return false. And we could have a very similar function for is_none. So we'll take an option of some type that we don't care about, and we'll return a Boolean. So a none is true, a sum is false. And so these are just some basic functions you could define for an option type. And I went ahead and implemented all of the Data.Maybe module from Haskell. So this is in their base library, and it's something that I use all the time when I'm writing functional code. This is just some examples of those functions, and then you could use these however you like. I also went ahead and wrote some tests. So there's 2 testing frameworks, and the first one that I'm going to discuss is eunit. So if you want to use eunit, you have to include this. I actually don't know what these are called, so feel free to tell me what they are in the comments. I usually just say that hurl, which is obviously probably not what people call them, but it's basically a header file of some kind if I understand correctly. So in this case, we have this function that we're going to use to test things. So this thing takes some integer type and it returns a option of an integer. And so it's just going to return none if the thing is odd, and it will return some if the thing is even. So we have this pattern guard here, which basically just takes the remainder after you divide with 2, and if it's 0, then we'll return sum of x. Okay? And so each of these, if you want to run the tests, they have to end in _test. So you'll see I have like a somewhat descriptive name, so like works if even, and then I have to add the _test for the test runner to actually pick up the test. And so basically what this is doing is we're saying run this thing on the right and then pattern match on it on the left. And so you can just like straight up pattern match stuff, and then if it doesn't work, it will just fail. So here we say episode 1 option. So this is our option function that we discussed previously. I'll have a default. And then you can pass functions to other functions, but you have to use this keyword fun. So I'm saying I'm going to use the function integer to list 1, so the arity1 function, and I'm going to pass it as a function. So you can do it like this, or you can write the anonymous function syntax, whichever you prefer. This is actually pretty nice to me. This is how I would pass functions in other languages where there's first class functions. I'm not sure that you would call this first class function. Like you can definitely pass functions to other functions. So pretty sure that makes them first class. And then we'll run none if odd 2. So this is clearly a divisible by 2, and therefore it's even. And so this should return 2 in this case, because the option function, if you recall, option A, function A to B, option A gives me a B. So I'm just returning the default if it is odd. Okay, so works if odd. Here's another one where we just give it an odd number. So none if odd. This is exactly the same as above. So I'm going to return the default in this case. So I pattern match default and I get the right thing. And this is another function that was towards the bottom. You often end up in these cases where you have like lists of these sums and nones, the options. And so what you may want to do is just gather all the sums. And so there's this function cat options, which allows you to take a list of option A and then just get a list of A out. So in this case, we're just getting the sum 0, sum 1, sum 2, and sticking it to a list. There's another function called map option, which does something very similar. It takes a list of A and then maps a function from A to option B and then collects all the B's. So in this case, we're turning this into sum 0, none, sum 2, none. And so then I'll just collect via cat maybes the sums, and I get 0 and 2. So we can quickly just run this. There's a rebar 3 eunit, and it will just run the tests, and you can see 4 tests, 0 failures. In the next video, we're going to actually just go even further because technically none of those types are used at compile time. So they are actually kind of useless to add if you're not going to use other tools. And so in the next video, I'll discuss some of the other tools that are available for you to have type checking. Thanks for watching this episode of Erlang Bits. Feel free to like and subscribe if you're interested in more.